You better believe it. Whether it's optimizing inventory, cross-selling products, or averting crises before they happen, the right information just a little bit beforehand, whether it's a couple of seconds, minutes, or hours, is more valuable than all of the information in the world 6 months later. Greetings, everyone. It's Tuesday, August 5th, 2014, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. I'm your guest host, Frank Baia. Up to the Tech Talk, the 2-second advantage, and the impact of business intelligence software on today's enterprise global competitiveness. We speak with Kevin Niblock, Regional Sales Vice President for TIBCO, a global software company that uniquely delivers the 2-second advantage. You know, the ability to capture the right information at the right time and act on it preemptively for a competitive advantage. TIBCO has become the strategic technology partner trusted by businesses around the world. Kevin's 20-year career in enterprise IT can be summed up in 2 words: driving value. Positioning hardware in the early 90s to the telecommunications industry, Kevin soon realized that software was the future. In 95, he joined PTC and focused on how software can transform the way manufacturers create, operate, and service their products. In 2007, Kevin saw the opportunity to extend beyond the manufacturing sector into all industries and joined TIBCO Software, where he soon became responsible for sales in the company's U.S. West, Central, and Southeastern regions. Discover the power of real-time event processing and insightful analytics, and learn how a uniquely suited platform transforms business info, enabling your enterprise into decision-making that can meet the challenges of the 21st century before the competition gets the 2-second advantage on you. As we speak with TIBCO Regional Sales Vice President Kevin Niblock. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Kevin, welcome to Tech Talk.
How you doing, Frank? Great to be here.
You know, we used to talk about big data. That's so 20 minutes ago. Now they're talking about fast data. And I can't think of a more faster track than I think the one that you guys are on in terms of the change in the whole IT enterprise and what's gone on just over the last couple of years, certainly over the last 20 years. Let's start out by looking a little bit in the past and then take us to where we are today. First question, in your 20 years of enterprise IT, which, do they do it by dog years? I don't know how they do it in IT with everything changing so quickly. It's got to seem like a lot longer than 20 years. But anyway,
it does feel like dog years, let me tell you.
Well, have you, just how often have you seen the role change? No less have you seen the role change?
Well, it's a great question. And, I am by no means an expert, but I do feel like that's definitely something that I've analyzed over the years. And, obviously there's been a great increase in technology and what the technology can do. But from my perspective, I more analyze it as, we've kind of come out of the ERP years. I know people are still deploying ERP, but, that was kind of the big IT thing to do, right? It was a application that spanned across the enterprise and everything was tied together, and it was kind of the answer for everybody's prayers. But I then kind of saw the disappointment in ERP where maybe they didn't quite get the value they thought they would get out of it, and or didn't quite get deployed as fast as possible. And that kind of hurt the reputation of IT, and then we saw a lot of cost consolidation in IT, collapsing data centers, shrinking the amount of applications people use, companies basically being created to do that quote-unquote my mess for less. IT became non-strategic, and we needed to just cut cost out of it. Mm. And then interestingly, I've seen a lot of IT organizations kind of matrix their organization, so they weren't so big and monolithic, but they were smaller, more matrixed, aligned to the business, and everything was about meeting the business objectives and kind of 30, 60, 90-day projects, and really to kind of earn IT credibility back. And then And then now we're still seeing some cost consolidation in the form of cloud and SaaS models, where I think business people have been tired of dealing with IT and the slowness and the cost of it, and just want to buy it themselves and put it on a cloud and have it that way. And honestly, Frank, I feel like it's all coming full circle back to architecture and what kind of architecture do companies have, and is it set for the 21st century? So lots of change in a very short amount of time.
Well, and I guess, I often joke about the fact that I come to a lot of these discussions as a tourist simply because you can't be a specialist in every single thing that we get a chance to talk about here on Tech Talk. But the reason I bring that up is to say that there's even a broader counterculture, if you will, that on one side you've got the focus of the IT and the technology community, not only on dynamic fluidity. I mean, we use different cliches. I'm into phantasmagoric now because I don't think that you can just have exponential. I mean, things are happening so quickly that you have to have change. I often will say, in order to have change, you have to have a standard. But can you have a standard long enough to have change? So now the other side of that culture is the enterprise operator, who's not spending all that time, or she's not spending all that time focused, and he can't keep up with anything that's going on. So the conflict becomes, how do you get that trust and how do you build that relationship that allows you to impact it with the capability that you can bring to the table. I mean, the bottom line is IT is creating whole new business models, and there are all new ways to engage the consumer. We mentioned data, but they're talking predictive, if not prescriptive analytics. Exciting times, but it's also challenging. So one of the things I'll pose to you is, what are the biggest challenges for the CIO today?
Wow, what a loaded question, Frank. What I like about that question is your preamble before it, because you hit on a lot of the complications that I think CIOs face, right? When you start talking about the, big data, fast data, predictive analytics, all that kind of stuff, you are really enabling the business with a set of capabilities that they really maybe don't even fathom what they can do yet. Mm-hmm. And yet, those are the things that might really drive competitive differentiation for that company in the future. So as a CIO, you have to be able to align to the business, but also explain very complicated technical things in a way that the business can kind of learn and figure out how they can use it to strategically differentiate themselves. And then the challenge with that is, then the CIO is kind of burdened by all the technical decisions that they've made in their past. They tend to carry a lot of technical spaghetti along with them, and sometimes that inhibits kind of the more 21st century things that people want to do. And then one of the other biggest challenges is that the CIO's kind of life expectancy in the job is not growing longer. It seems to be growing shorter.
Maybe we're just burning them out quicker.
I think we might be burning them out quicker. I think we might be throwing a lot at them. But when you think about it, if we're truly in kind of a seed change in technology, which I do feel that we are, then people really need to be looking at that. What does their architecture look like out for the next 3 to 5 years? And in order to achieve that goal, you kind of have to stay in the job for that long. And with things changing so fast, I think that's challenging for people.
Well, and job implies a description. When you start talking about, what's truly you might say it's futuristic, but the reality of the evolution of cognitive computing and what's already going on with sales automation and the whole concept now of deductive reasoning being transferred to sensors that connect machine to machine, Internet of Things. I mean, where does the CIO fit in an automated and super reality?
Well, I think he sits right in the middle, and I think he's in the most powerful position he could be from when you look at the C-level suite of people. The challenge is I think, ERP by its very nature was an application that was really more business oriented. So a CEO or a CFO that's willing to spend money on it could understand, how they did their books and how they could do their books differently in this new ERP system, and then they often funded it and off they went. Where now we're in a state where I think the differentiating capabilities are deep in the bowels of IT, and some very cool and revolutionary stuff, but also very technical and connected to a lot of different things. And the challenge, I think, is for a CIO to be able to understand that potential and be able to relate it to the business. But even then, as you say, with the Internet of Things happening, the amount of data and the usefulness of that data and how they leverage it in real time is shrinking. And I got a lot of people telling me that they built an architecture to run their business for the 20th century, and there's a real challenge to keeping and building the 21st century architecture that they know they're going to need. And I think their competitors, who they see traditionally in the 20th century, who their competitors were, are actually completely different companies in the 21st century.
Well, and obviously when we talk about disruption and we talk about the hybriding of some of these technologies creating radical change where you don't even see the competitor coming, I heard it said you don't even hear them coming. It's like the electric car, you don't hear it coming. But let's come back a little bit into some challenges that are super realities that probably weren't anticipated even just a few years ago. And I guess where I'm going there is like web and mobile integration, and then you got security, compliance, and operational intelligence. Talk a little bit about the real-time issues of those challenges right now.
Well, the real-time issue is I think it's funny, when I think of my company TIBCO and our founder Vivek. I mean, he's written books, dating back, and they've all been around, the ability to predict and understand what you're going to need to do in the future versus analyzing the past. And you take those challenges, you really need to. It really becomes a big data problem, and I think the explosion of data is the thing that people didn't necessarily anticipate. Even if you just look at integration was about moving transactional data from application to application to allow those applications to do their job better. Now it's way beyond transactional data. It's basically events. What are the events that are happening in those applications that may not actually have triggered a transaction, but events that we want to be able to analyze in real time, logs of information.
Well, I think something from your website that I thought was it communicates, and that is machine data into insights.
Yes, right. I mean, we have people that are analyzing the weight of the products floating across their conveyor belts because they had fear that people were stealing components off the conveyor belt. So the way that they were going to track it was analyzing the weight and the changes of the weight. So, there you're having conveyor belts giving you real-time data, right, and being correlated and acted upon in real time to find out if security or theft or fraud is happening. And that is just in every business right now. I mean, the security challenges I think that companies have is a daunting task. I don't think we really ever predicted we needed the security that we needed and needed to be able to analyze it in real time.
Well, it's sort of like the Internet of Things in reverse. I think if everything is connected so much, it opens up more opportunities unfortunately, for that veil of security to be broken into, coming from the other direction. One of the things that I'm curious about, though, is that I think in some cases, again, as I mentioned jokingly, but it really is true, coming in as a sort of a tourist looking at all of these things, and you talk about the weight factor in that manufacturing plant. Some of the technologies are happening because they can, and so now because you can, how do you choose the right kind of data to work with, and how do you create better outcomes from that information?
Well, I mean that is definitely a 21st century problem, which is an interesting one. I think what we're seeing with a lot of companies out there right now is that they actually have 20th century problems that they want to solve, and they now have more data in which to analyze in order to figure out how to solve that problem. And then it becomes an evolution. As they realize the capabilities that they actually have to analyze this real-time data, they actually start thinking of 21st century type problems that they want to solve. And they didn't really think that way before because they didn't know the capabilities kind of existed to do it. So it's an interesting snowballing effect for people. At least with us and with the companies that we're dealing with, we tend to find they start with something smaller and simpler, and by leveraging the Internet of Things and all the data, we help them not only analyze the data at rest, which I think is what most people are trying to do with their big data right now. But think about it, Frank. Once you analyze your data at rest, right? You have good data, you have clean data, you have comprehensive data. You start looking at all the different types of data, and then you start doing your analytics on it. What you end up seeing is patterns and things that you want to correlate, but you want to take advantage of them in real time. And I think that's really where the challenges for most people come into play, which is, okay, one is, what is big data? How do I get it in one spot? How do I make sure it's clean? Then I want to do analytics on it. Once I do the analytics, I actually want to take advantage of the stuff that I learned and leverage it in real time. And so there's a lot of learning, I think, for companies to figure out really who they are and who they want to be in this 21st century.
It's funny because one of the things I've said in some of the conversations we've enjoyed here is that sometimes the solutions are not clear to the people because they don't realize they have a problem. There's not even the understanding that they can solve there's a solution out there because they didn't know they needed it. As crazy as that sounds.
Philosophically, that's what I've always believed. I feel like that's the education that's going on right now, and I've seen it, especially in the last 4 to 5 years, where it's really kind of taking hold. To be honest with you, I saw a real noticeable difference after the recession/depression we had in 2009. I felt like IT pressed pause on spending, and that was the first pause that they've had in a while. And coming out of that pause, they really decided, if we're going to spend money, we want to spend it on a more strategic way. We want to understand our customers better. We want to understand the 360-degree view of information that's all tied up in all these other systems, and we really want to be able to handle customer service better and their problems better and be able to know what to sell them, kind of have a conversation of one instead of a one-to-many, where I actually know what this particular person likes.
I think that is spot on. I think really what you're saying, Kev, is one of those epiphanies. I mean, having been an eclectic series of conversations, there was a lot of people that were concerned about that pause because they thought of it in the old economy way, and that was, boy, we've got problems and we're tightening our belts. But I think it was more what you just described, and that was they said, wait a minute, we need to analyze what we're doing here. No more quick knee-jerks. We need to take a moment and look at the entire spans of opportunities, where we are, the old cliches about where we've been, where are we now, where are we going, and how are we going to get there.
Yeah.
Well, one last question as our time is rapidly closing. Where does the company start the journey?
Well, yeah, it's a new world, and I'd like to think that there's 3 kind of main capabilities that a company needs to be considering. One is integrate, and TIBCO is kind of known for our integration. I shouldn't say kind of, we are known, but what I'm seeing, it's not really integration anymore. It's leveraging the integration infrastructure to do aggregation. And it's not integrating transactional data anymore. It's actually aggregation of those events and those Internet of Things and all that information, and allowing it to be part of the analysis and analytics that you want to do on that data, which is really kind of step 2. So you integrate/aggregate, then you analyze, right? And you analyze not only the stuff at rest, but once you realize the stuff you have at rest, you get some really good and valuable data. You got to figure out how to act on that in real time with the data in motion. And those are kind of what we have been stepping people through. Integrate/aggregate, analyze data at rest and data in motion, and then build a 21st century architecture that allows you to take advantage of those patterns and insight you you've done from your analytics. And, a lot of people are forming an omni-channel strategy so that they can touch their customers, partners, employees, in a more consistent one-on-one basis and in real time when it's relevant. I think at TIBCO, I love our, our theory, which is have the right information at the right time to the right person in the right context is a lot more valuable than having all the data, after the fact. And we're seeing the industry really catching on to that right now.
Well, no small wonder why you guys are doing as good as you are and contributing as much as you are to your clients and to their success. The bottom line is you're pointing out, integrate, analyze, and then after all things are said, no decision is a decision. You got to take action, but you can't take action until you really have a confidence level. And it sounds to me, with the kind of guys like you are standing on my side, I'm going to feel a lot stronger about taking those actions. Kevin, brilliant stuff, really insightful. Thanking you for taking so much time out of your busy schedule to join us for a few minutes today on Tech Talk.
Thanks, Frank. It was great being here.